following is intended to provoke thought and challenge our assumptions. The opinions we hold are subject to change based on new and valid information. Your discretion is advised.
I plan on taking this back from you tomorrow at poker.
Yeah, okay. Oh, speaking of poker, Hollis, I can just pick you up.
Okay, cool.
I think that's at 6:30?
I don't know. Oh, you're going to be there?
Yeah.
You know Evan?
I met him once before. Yeah.
Ah, cool.
Same time he met you.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
but,
right.
I mean, I don't really know Evan, but Sanan's inviting me.
Cool. Yeah, dude.
You're going to like it.
He's a good dude.
And I love poker, so it'll be fun.
I haven't played poker in fucking years. Like, probably... Actually, I played at Jesus' wedding.
What
Before
makes you
that,
good
a
at
long time
poker,
ago.
Hollis?
Oh, I can't tell you because we're playing tomorrow.
I can tell you what makes me good at poker.
Are we recording?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll tell you. I fucking bring a gun.
I exercise my second right. Great.
No, I'm a weird poker player because I'm either the first person out or I win the whole thing. There's no in between.
I'm an emotional poker player. So that's
the
the best kind.
Is the game gonna be just $10 buy-in, or is it $10 to continue to buy in over and over again?
I
You
did
know?
not ask that question. I'm pretty sure it's the former, not the latter.
I'm cool with any method.
Yeah, I'll be cool with it. I'm sure we'll
don't
eat some
care.
good food, and we'll have some good fun.
Yeah, I plan on bringing some shit to share.
My problem with any card game is that I play a card game that's strategic, but also has like random factors. Hearthstone, it's like Blizzard's. Dude, I've been
I
playing.
know Hearthstone, but I can't play it.
Yeah, I've been playing that game for probably like 3 years, and I convinced myself that I'm good at card games because I'm good at that.
My friend Devin does it on Twitch and has like 10,000 followers.
Wow.
Wow.
Why?
I don't know. He spends a lot of time.
Like, why?
Yeah, it's kind of fun if I'm like lonely at 3 a.m. I just like go on Twitch and say what's up to Devin.
Does he make money? Is that what he does? for
Yeah,
money?
he makes a little bit of money. Like he's not killing it, but
All right.
I mean, for the hours, I don't know long term if it's worth it.
Right.
You know, but yeah.
Does he have like a other job, or does he just do that?
He does a lot of like freelance music producing and stuff. But
Hey man, you gotta have a diversified portfolio. You know, you gotta get a little bit of your gig work here.
yeah, he's been a side hustler for a long time. Big props to my boy Devin. He'll probably listen to this actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sweet.
he's rad. He's always
Dude,
been
Hearthstone's-
he's always been super supportive of all the random shit that I do every year.
Well, I hope he is if he's like playing Hearthstone on Twitch. Like,
Good at it.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Let's get started then.
Okay.
So I want to mention, I was listening to the podcast the other day, just like editing it, and you said something at the end of when we were talking about the mayoral race, Hollis. You're talking about Barbara Bree. And
I was calling her Bry.
we all were.
We all were.
Yeah, but to be fair, every single person who's been named Bry spells it that way. So
Yeah,
I've known
I'm sure she's used to it. When
Yeah.
she listens to our podcast, she won't take offense.
Right.
She's definitely a listener.
Yeah.
Oh, let's put the phones on the things.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that Barbara Bree and Todd Gloria were just from different worlds. Like she was a Harvard grad. She came from, was it upper middle class or upper class? And how she's literally just lived like an entirely different life.
Oh man, how wrong am I? Is that where we're going with this?
No. What do you mean?
Okay.
No.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So like, tell me more about that. And like, because you didn't finish your thought. You were essentially saying that these were like two very different people and they've grown up totally different.
Well, so, I mean, just the long and short of it is like, Todd Gloria, literally, like his mom was like a maid, and I can't remember what school he went to, but it certainly wasn't Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
And and Barbara Bree, like she's really high up in an organization called Vistage,
Mm-hmm.
which is where executives get together and roundtable different ideas, to troubleshoot their business with other executives.
That's a huge business here in San Diego, Vistage.
Yeah, I actually know somebody who's in that.
Oh, yeah.
I was in it for 2 years.
Manages those events for the people.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a Vistage member for 2 years, and it was super helpful, and I met some really cool people.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually met, he was in my group, was the president of Sector 9 Skateboards. Yeah, but, yeah, I mean, but she just like, it's a different situation. Honestly, I don't know her childhood.
Right.
But I do know Todd Gloria's, and they're just apples and oranges.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny that you mentioned it, because I've been telling you guys I've been reading this book called The Bell Curve. And it was a pretty controversial book back in 1996 when it came out. And
it's still a controversial book.
Controversial.
It was then, and it is now.
Yeah. And so I ordered that book a little while ago, and I ordered the How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. And I'm just reading first through The Bell Curve, which is a pretty dense book. Like, it's dense in terms of just the amount of writing and how detailed and methodical they are through describing their thoughts. But in the first part, which I'm done with part 1, they haven't got into the race thing yet, which is the controversy behind the book. Do you know about the controversy behind the book, Scott? Okay.
Yeah, we should probably fill our listeners in
with
what this book actually is.
So essentially, one of the big controversial pieces of this book was that it stated, and I haven't got to this part yet, so I haven't read it for myself, that that African Americans in the United States have IQ at 1 standard deviation below whites. So on average, an African American has an IQ that's 1 standard deviation below.
According to this book. And so you can see why this is an extremely controversial book.
Yeah. So
I've heard
I
you say
think
this
guy's
before.
career basically ended.
No, it hasn't. He's still doing just fine.
It's a crazy,
But he definitely has this stigma now to him, Charles Murray, and it was another author, but now he's dead. And so, the issues with that is that you're saying that there's like potentially race-based cognitive differences, right? And I haven't got to this yet. And the way that they've been building up this book, I'd be very surprised if it was that simple as the controversy has stated it to be. I would think that some of the hype around the controversy has been misguided and misused, but you obviously the obvious implications for a number like that is that white supremacist groups come out and be like, you see, this is why the black cannot, and it's just like fueling the propaganda.
Yeah.
Just horrible.
That is a disgusting, age-old saying. This goes back to the Dutch slave trade, basically. It's disgusting how it spawned. Look at the rules from slavery. Look at the laws from slavery. That's what I'm saying, like 3/4 black, you're 3/4 a person, shit like that. That's just disgusting.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just carries into this present day still with racism, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we were here to talk about the election, and you're ambushing us with Charles Murray.
Well,
he's trying to make a point with Barbara Bree.
Yeah, making a point with Barbara Bree.
Todd
So
Gloria.
the way that the book is built in part 1 is making the case of just how important IQ is in success in life, and that the education system has more and more become a huge force in partitioning our population into those who have higher IQ versus those who don't. Now, for example, the ratio of people with high IQs has, the percentage of people with high IQs who are likely to go to college has increased significantly. So back in the 20s, you maybe had a 50% chance of going to college if you were super bright.
Well,
now it's 86%, 96%, it just keeps increasing. Yeah.
But that's probably due to the fact that it's more competitive of a market now, and you have faster information spread. And it's just that culture is realizing that you need to go to school. We were talking about this the other day.
Mm-hmm.
A master's degree is the next bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how many high school dropouts are there nowadays compared to what there were, let's say in the 50s, when farming was probably a lot more prevalent than, say computer sciences or marketing, information technology, those types of things.
It's gone down probably.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Significantly.
Sure. And also another thing to consider too, how much easier is it to pass high school than it was before?
Right. Or a bachelor's.
Yeah.
And what kinds of bachelors.
Yeah.
So this is 1996. So this is almost,
Yeah, it's 20s, almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually, it's more than 20 years ago.
Almost. Yeah.
Math is hard.
Yeah.
I did not go to school.
So here's an example. You mentioned Barbara Bree, and she's this Harvard graduate. Well, they use Harvard as an example through this book, and they're saying that the people who are going to Harvard today are more likely smarter than the people who are going to Harvard in the past, because Harvard started screening out for intelligence. Like, they just became more and more competitive, so they started attracting more and more really bright people. It doesn't mean every single person who goes to Harvard is bright. It just means that the average intellect of a Harvard graduating class is going to look significantly different than the population that doesn't even graduate high school.
Okay.
In the same
I understand.
kind of realm. Let me give another example.
Seems
Hollis,
how it works.
do you have a degree?
I do not.
Do you have a degree? Does your wife have a degree?
Yes, doctorate.
A doctorate. I have a master's. You have a bachelor's. In pursuit of your master's.
I almost have an associate's degree. I just want to put that out there. I think I'm about 4 units short.
I've got over 163 credits right now in college. And I think it was like 128 or something like that for a bachelor's.
Yeah.
Because I've changed my major and gone to different schools. But whatever, all I'm saying is like it's a tremendous amount of college credits.
Right.
And also a tremendous amount of college debt.
So let me make this point. Hollis,
Yeah,
you don't have a degree,
right.
but the people around you
Yeah,
you are really good friends with a doctor
sure.
who's married to a physicist.
Yeah, from Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a doctorate in physics from Columbia.
So just your social circle is
Sure.
extremely educated, which probably signifies that you have likely a high level of intelligence, more so than the average person, because it is very unlikely for someone who doesn't have a degree to also have friends who have degrees. Does that make sense? Like, it becomes like statistically, it's more likely that you have like people and like education. So if you're a dropout, you're more likely to have dropouts as friends. So you have this partitioning of the population. So Barbara Bree is part of this like cycle of people who mostly only know Harvard graduates.
Well,
Not saying that this is who she is. I'm just saying
Yeah.
like this is the sort of partitioning of America.
Hold on. When did she get her degree in Harvard? Because, if she got her degree back in, let's say,
70s?
I don't know, the 70s, 60s, 70s,
Yeah.
that degree is about as equivalent to a high school education now.
Yeah. I can get your whole program online now.
Probably debatable.
Western governors, right?
Right. But that's the argument that the book is making, and I'm thinking this is how I'm tying it into the election, is that we're starting to see the effects of ever more partitioning population, where the population is starting to partition itself based on certain factors. And in this book, it is highlighting that IQ is one of many factors that are separating our population.
I see that in my resume, looking at possible job prospects and being a candidate for another opportunity in the past. So I have University of Maryland College, which is like a subsidy of what University of Maryland is, and they've actually changed their name since then. And having that on my resume while applying, people will ask me, well, how come you didn't go to a traditional 4-year? Like, that's actually asked in an interview. My response was, well, I did. I just also became a military contractor, went overseas and did this because it was a program that was online that I could do while I was deployed, essentially.
Explain yourself.
Yeah. So then that also leads into a whole different, conversations. Oh, you're overseas, you're deployed, you're in the military, blah, blah, blah. But I can see that sense of judgment in their faces.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you didn't finish at University of South Carolina. Oh, you're from Michigan, you didn't go to Michigan, those things.
And now you're highlighting the social
Yeah,
aspect of it.
yeah. And now I'm enrolled in a university called Excelsior, which is an online education, whatever program.
Whatever program.
Well, I say whatever program because I'm doing
I got a whatever degree too.
I'm doing a bunch of undergraduate stuff right now. Because I studied anthropology and philosophy. It's a liberal arts, and I want to go into a master's program for finance. So I'm doing a bunch of undergrad to get ready for the graduate, because I did not take anything finance related in college. I did not take anything really math related in college at all. So like all of those principles and all those things I've learned from my career, but I want that college education so that way I can go in and have the best foot forward for the master's program. But it's when I tell people Excelsior is what I'm attending, it's like, why? Well, you're throwing away your money. That's not even a real college. It's like, well, so I'm getting my ass handed to me in school right now. Fuck you.
So I totally understand where you're coming from there, because actually when I was making the decision of what am I going to do for my education, when I was in high school, like my childhood was just pure chaos. So like I had friends who started going and touring colleges, and I was like, wait, what? You're taking SATs this weekend? What are those? And so like I was completely clueless. But as soon as I clued into it, I kind of did the math. And I was like, I don't want to spend the money and take on the debt to go to a 4-year school right out of the gate. And honestly, they probably wouldn't have taken me. So my path was kind of decided that I'm just going to start kind of an entrepreneurial style and just start building my own things. And I'm going to focus my education just on the things that I need to accomplish the next step. So I decided I wanted to move into film. Terrible decision. And I have no guidance in my life. So therefore I went full steam ahead. And I went to Vancouver Film School, which was a 1-year for-profit school. But don't worry, Scotty, I'm getting back to where this aligns with your Excelsior. So I chose this school. The program was called Entertainment Business Management, and it was a new program. It was like their second year doing the program. And everyone else that went through that program with me thought it was the biggest waste of money. But me, I lived in my grandfather's basement. I hardly went outside. And for 1 year, I have never studied so much in my entire life. And everything that I learned there enabled me to start our first production company and then our marketing agency. And we did fairly well with those. The production company grew to $300,000 in revenue with 2 employees, and the marketing agency we grew to around $1 million and had about 6 employees. But everything that I learned in that for-profit school was what helped me accomplish that. And I think why so many people felt that they didn't get what they wanted out of it was because you had to figure out how to apply the tools and techniques that were given to you into the real world. But you don't have that just like you've been pre-approved check mark.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Katie, she's very smart, my wife, pre-approved for sure. But she went to USC to do her physical therapy. And now, I mean, when she submits a resume somewhere, like she gets called in, no questions asked, like she's in there and the job is basically hers. Yeah. So that's kind of the difference is like, I kind of have to prove that my experience has resulted in real world tangible results every step of the way. Yeah. and I don't have that pre-approved check mark that she does.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I have to show my career, like actually go in and peel back the layers to the onion and show what the actual value is to hiring me. I mean, I'm a pretty ambitious person. Like opportunity presents itself. I've seldomly ever said no. And that's one of the strongest attributes that I have going into an interview when it comes to like a lack of an engineering education, because I certainly don't have that, but I work for an engineering firm. So it's a struggle when you have to go and sit in front of a board when you're interviewing in front of, and they grill you on your education. Like,
so the interesting thing for me is my education has almost never come up in job interviews.
Right.
It's
Mine
always been
always
like,
does.
it always comes back to like, what was the last thing you did that directly related to the thing we want you to do?
Yeah.
And what was your performance? Because I work in marketing, so it's generally pretty crystal
Measurable.
clear on
Yeah.
what did you do?
Yeah.
What was your role on the team? And what were the results?
That's strange. I wonder how long each of our disciplines, our interviews are. Like you're in marketing, you're in insurance.
Well, I'm not really in that may be the industry I work in, but my discipline is totally different.
So
You're in personal development or like training?
Yeah, I would say it's like internal consulting and then training and development.
Yeah.
okay. I mean, I'm pretty straightforward. I'm in construction engineering, right? So my interview process, like I usually go through 2 or 3 interviews, and each one of those interviews is like no less than 45 minutes. So I think the longest interview that I had was up to an hour and a half. It's crazy how long the interview was. I remember that.
Are they just asking you question after question after question, or is there more of a
It's conversation
Yeah.
primarily, but it's like, okay, tell us about this project, tell us about that project, because I have my projects listed on my resume, and it has like essentially a capital value as well as a duration and a location. So oftentimes we talk about that capital value and the struggles that are associated with managing like a $1.3 billion project, but then they'll also see that I have $9 million projects. So how come I have such a delta with that? And then they'll see the locations, and I have fucking abstract locations. Like obviously I've been to Kandahar, but I've also been all over the States. I've got 7 countries underneath my belt and 16 states underneath my belt, just that I've worked in. So
Sound like a transient.
yeah, basically.
Not to be trusted.
Yeah, so basically. But then you look at the durations of each of those places. Those durations range from a couple weeks here to a couple years there, type of a thing. So it's a conversation that's like, how come you're all over the fucking place?
And more and more with people our age, like, it used to be if you saw like 2 years here, 3 years there, 1 year there, that was like a huge red flag. But now, I mean, companies are just like churning people all over the place.
Yeah, I still think that's not a great
yeah.
means for young people, and this is a huge belief point of mine, is that you're not getting anything truly meaningful done at any medium size or large employer in 2 to 3 years. It takes way longer to develop quality projects under your belt, quality experience, and quality relationships.
Agreed.
It's just not happening in 2 years.
I don't have a lot of companies underneath my belt. So what is a blemish, though, is I've had companies who've sold and we've changed our name. So that sucks, because then you try to explain that to a prospect employer. It's like, well, it's actually the same group, but they sold and went to a different group.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing to do with that, obviously.
Yeah.
I just now have a new name to my company.
Yeah.
So, but for me, I mean, I would say that I've been in engineering, I want to say almost a decade now, somewhere around there. And I've had 3 companies in a decade. And I feel like that's excessive.
So then I would ask you, Scott, because you've had all these experiences, and same with you, Hollis. And I would ask you, Hollis, like I would seriously doubt that most people who interact with you don't walk away thinking like, man, that's an uneducated dude. Like, I would imagine that's not an experience you have where you feel like, oh, geez, I'm super uneducated around these people.
I'm so self-critical in my own head that I'm thinking that constantly, but I don't know what other people think. But what I can say in defense of my life choices is my wife, yes, she has a green check mark where she gets to walk through all the gates, but she has all the debt to prove it.
Yeah.
And I'm debt-free.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah.
Just from a pure number
I would
standpoint.
answer that a little bit differently.
What?
I am hands down the least educated person in my immediate work. I say circle, my immediate work circle, but it's educated on the engineering disciplines. I am not an electrical engineer, mechanical, structural, civil engineer. So those guys, when I sit around a meeting or sit in a meeting for that,
And they're lobbying all those.
it's stuff that I don't know. I've got hands-on experience for sure, but I also have the managerial stuff, to be able to direct and operate and, control the project in that regard, because that's what I am. I'm a project manager. But when it comes to the technical stuff, I have to go to any of those engineers or designers.
Sure.
And I'm by all means, I'm a junior PM in my industry, and
Project manager.
Yeah, junior project manager in my industry. I'm in, I would say I'm not in over my head because I have that ability to be able to manage and to be able to defer to a strong team. But if I didn't have a strong team and I had a client who was on my ass about something, I would fail as a project manager.
Do you have your PMP?
No, I don't. I want to
grab that, man.
That's a whole different thing.
Does that not apply to construction?
It sure does, but there's some drama with that.
Yeah.
So
do the UCSD? It's like $2,000 or whatever.
Dude, there's cheaper programs.
Yeah, there's cheaper programs.
but
There's
UCSD.
accelerated Yeah, it's easy. Bottom line is, I've been wanting
It's
my employer
expensive
to
though.
pay for it.
It's like $4,000.
So
more.
worth it.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely worth it.
So I think this goes back to you probably couldn't be in the position that you're in without some semblance of higher general intelligence. That's kind of like the focus of that bell curve book. Same with you, Hollis. Like, you probably couldn't do some of the things that you do. You probably couldn't even hang around the people that you hang around or attract, like your wife who's got a PhD, if you were like not somewhat intelligent, right? Like if you were just a Dumbo, like that would be a turnoff for a lot of people, and you'd attract other.
And family education ties in too, right?
Right.
My dad has a PhD in systems engineering.
Mm-hmm.
His father was a corporate lawyer. My mom was just an artist because she had family money from lawyers back in the day.
Yeah.
So like,
education
the history
aside,
is,
it's the intelligence factor, and this is kind of what the bell curve tries to paint the picture of, is that it's not all the factors that indicate success. It's not everything that makes or breaks a person, but it is a very important factor in our society. And we're starting to partition the society based on intelligence metrics, and that oftentimes, and I'm going somewhere with this in terms of like this sort of arc that I see happening in our country today, because it's not just intelligence that we're being partitioned by, but a person like Barbara Bry has a very different understanding of San Diego than you or I do. And it's because the circles that she's running in, partitioned by her education background, whether or not she's even more intelligent, she's had more access to probably more intelligent people than any of us. I mean, if she's worked with high corporate executives, those are usually pretty savvy people. Even if they make dumb decisions, they're pretty intelligent people. Mm-hmm. That's how they get into those positions.
So there's a couple things you mentioned in there, though. One is that intelligence is a good indicator of, let's call it, financial success in life.
A lot of success, yeah.
And so there's some people who would dispute that. From what I can tell is, I think if you're a very bright person, you have a much higher chance of being successful.
Yes.
But there are people out there who dispute that point, and they go, well, any intelligence can easily be offset through grit and hard work and perseverance and whatever. And there's a saying that I like a lot that's, whatever you lack upstairs, you have to make up for in your heel. Basically meaning like, hey, if you're not that bright, you better work your effing ass off, and you'll be just fine.
The problem with, I would say, that argument, and if someone tried to make that with me, is like, it's kind of a low intelligence argument because you're arguing about the exception to the general rule, and I'm just talking about the general rule.
Well,
And
I
and
think
you
there are
agree
people
with
who-
me.
Yeah,
it's
I
just-
do. I just think there are people who dispute that the intelligence really is a big indicator. And then when you take it the next level and you throw race into it, people are just like, what the F?
Yeah, I'm not there yet, so
And
I don't
even
want
want to go there,
I-
man. That's a whole terrifying thing.
I do want to talk about this book as I'm reading through it, and I'm not there yet because I want to give it a real critical eyes. And so far, what I'm reading, what he's painting the picture of, is that this country is starting more and more to reward higher IQ over other factors. So it's an interesting argument, and I'm still open-minded to keep reading through it. But this is just what I have been reading, and I'm not saying that I agree with it.
Is
or
that a bad thing to reward the higher IQ?
That's a good question.
So I really think that if
Here-
you just look at society as a hierarchy, I think here in America, we love a winner. I don't think we love underdogs. I don't think that's what we're all about. And so if somebody starts excelling in something, we nurture and support that, and we try to make that exceptional person even more exceptional at that. And if somebody doesn't, like in management, people talk about applying the 80-20 rule all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, like, you're one way you can slice that is your top 20% performers. That's where you as a manager should be dedicating 80% of your time and attention.
Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to see the results. And your lowest 20% of your performers, you get rid of them.
Yeah.
You're wasting your time and energy on them.
Yeah.
And so...
Or just not focus as much time
Yeah.
and energy. And unfortunately, a lot of people focus on the bad apples rather than the good apples.
Right. And so it's, I think naturally we optimize for what's working.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyone who's above average intelligence is going to come at a task and be more efficient at accomplishing it.
Potentially, there's
speaking.
exceptions, of course, but yeah, generally speaking. Now, Scott, you asked the question of like whether or not this is a bad thing. What I like so far about the book is it doesn't try to impose that moral implication. All it does is try to paint the picture of what the implications are. And one of the implications is that as you keep partitioning this group of people who are more and more removed from society and who start acquiring more and more resources to influence society, that the way that they're looking to influence society is significantly different than the rest of the population. So, is that bad? I don't know. One of the challenges and dangers is, do you have a population who thinks that they are more appropriate to make changes and rules and how we should do things, and they're not potentially connected to the majority of people? Or is that fair, where you have higher IQ, maybe you understand things at a higher level?
The situation that comes into my mind is Plato and Socrates, right? The aristocracy, in which that you had philosophers and you had these higher educated, thought-provoking, more neutral type of a person leading the country. So I guess the ideal government, you would want to see that. You would want to see somebody who has a higher education, who has a higher IQ, who has the ability to manage these resources as they obtain them, but with the intent to manage them for the greater good of the entire population. Now, in America, capitalism, greed, rampant, clearly. But maybe we just aren't to that point where it naturally occurs, in which we have true, moral, honorable people with a higher IQ that have taken the power and who have the resources to manage the country.
So,
I don't know if we'll ever go there.
I think that's really tough,
Yeah.
man. And I think there's a lot of systemic issues that prevent us from doing some things like this.
That's a good point. So going back to this,
But are those systemic issues there? And do we have those limitations because we have prejudices from the lower IQ who still remains in power? The bigoted,
the
greedy.
I do want to address that, and I want to go into a smaller like sample case study, just like a small micro. I want to go from that big macro lens to a micro lens, and then over time, I think we should try to figure out how to answer that question. and have our opinion and stance on it.
So one of the things that jumps out at me though is like, all right, this assumption that IQ is one of the big differentiators. Lifestyle means, like you said, your social group, your opportunities. So like one interesting experience that I had was after I exited the marketing agency that we had, right? I got kind of dropped into possibly a role that was over my head. But I was the chief operating officer managing a $2 million annual budget, venture capital backed, to build an automated marketing platform. So like, this is a very, very, very difficult task. And I was just kind of dropped into this. But having been dropped into that, what I had to learn was a completely different skill set than the experiences that most people get. Because now I am having to figure out what are the KPIs for each of these departments. How do I get
performance indicators?
Key performance indicators. How do I get them working together? How do I manage a dev team onshore and offshore? How do I network into potential partner companies? Like all of these really challenging things. But like, let's say I decided to dedicate all of my time and energy to just being a graphic designer. And so there's no difference in my intelligence versus the graphic designer's intelligence. But there's an argument that there might be a better return on your time and energy, financially speaking, by learning those skill sets of managing teams and how to get optimized performance out of them. What are the metrics you got to watch?
Absolutely.
Right. And so it's
You're talking about the application of the intelligence.
Yeah. And just where I just got dropped in. So all of a sudden I had these opportunities that a lot of these kids that their families have tons of money and they're just like, hey, Dad, I want to start a business. And he goes, well, put together a business plan and we'll see if we can arrange some investors for you.
Yeah.
And they get 10 of their rich buddies together and here's $6 million. Go have fun.
Yeah.
Like that's not crazy. That shit happens all the time when you're in those circles. And so now that kid is getting groomed and getting the opportunities of all these other companies that are already successful that kind of need that skill set. Whereas that kid's no smarter than the graphic designer. They've just had to focus on different responsibilities. So if you were growing up in a household where your mom's a crackhead, you're having to focus on a different set of life survival responsibilities than the kid who has all that taken care of. And, there's nice meals and there's tutors and all that. All that kid has to focus on is how do I make the best use of this capital that we have?
Yeah. And I like that, what you're painting, because that's something that literally it's like you're taking examples from the book. Now, imagine that the likelihood of someone who is born in that crack house, most people are average intelligence. And then a lot of people...
That is what average means.
Yeah. But like when you say that, it's weird, but people forget, right?
Yeah.
That half the population is lower than average, and people forget. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's something that you have to think about, right?
I'm one of those. I think that holy shit.
Yeah,
Holy
you
shit.
really have to just go back to your fundamentals and remember how to count. So that crack house, even if they were of low intelligence, the people who are more often making more and more money generally have higher intelligence and are breeding with other people who have higher intelligence. And then they're providing these opportunities to these kids who oftentimes have higher intelligence. But even if they have low intelligence, what you're saying is that the opportunity that they're getting, they go to Harvard, they go to Yale, they go to Ivy League schools, even if they are dumber than a kid who's growing up in the crack house, the amount of opportunity is so different, and they could still not make it out.
And the 2020 college acceptance scandal from California.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the arguments is, one of the goals of liberal utopia is to create equal opportunity, right? Where you can actually tweak the environment to the point that it's so perfect that everyone has the same amount of opportunity. Well, if that were the case, then IQ becomes even more important than it is currently. Right now, it's just one factor in many that has a chance of influencing your success.
Yeah.
But if we controlled the environment, now all that you're left with are genetic factors like IQ.
Yang talks about that a lot, where he basically says, I think it's 70% of the educational outcomes of students come from the home. Like teachers, we put it all on them, but really they're responsible for a small piece, like teacher schools. And so, you know, in this utopia you're talking about, you'd have to have some way to help level that playing field in the home life of the kid who grows up in the crack house.
Right.
And I don't know how the heck you do that.
And the kid who got $10 million from his rich parents or her rich parents that have a business, are they becoming more integrated with that society, or are they creating more places and environments for people like them?
I thought we were here to talk about the election.
Yeah. I'm moving towards this government thing, and I recently, so the election's happening right now, and we don't have the results yet. I think this is going to be nuts. One of the things that's not working well with our government is this sort of archaic practices that I've been noticing that I question why we still do them. And one that recently happened was testifying in front of Congress, the tech industries. Did you guys see some of these clips that came out from the testifying of like Twitter, Google, Facebook?
I've seen some of the past Senate testifies and things like, what was her name? I can't remember her name. She was one of the accusers for sexual harassment to Kavanaugh. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, you saw that. But that was the hearing, or the, what did they call it? Swearing in of chief.
Yeah.
Not the swearing in, but the
commies testify. I saw a handful, and it's just like, even when like the House was subpoenaing people to come in. Yeah. And the roadblocks for that, like subpoena and White House staff, without any ramifications for not showing up. You know, it's like, what the fuck? Come on.
So there's what I think a growing disconnect between Congress or the government and our actual world. There is a growing separation, and it loosely is tied with this sort of IQ thing and transitioning from Barbara Bree and, you know, this sort of different type of lifestyle they live. These, like, for example, congressmen, congresswomen are living completely different types of lifestyles than, let's say, these tech CEOs and the worlds that they live in. And so I'm watching, and I think it was CNET, and they put like some clips up, which it was just weird. And it was like, Ted Cruz slams Twitter CEO over something. And it's like Ted Cruz trying to look like a badass with his like his facial hair. Oh, dude, although it does remind me of like the olden days, you know, kind of beards that they had back when.
I haven't seen him recently. I just saw the salt and pepper scruff.
Yeah.
But all I can imagine is that Ted Cruz says something that just is not a slam at all, not relevant to the tech industry. Yeah. And then the tech industry being like scratching their heads like, why did you even ask that? That's like, what do you mean you don't know how to pour water in a glass?
Yeah. So we use CEO optimization in order to track individual like they're just using all this like tech jargon to like describe and try to explain to him how it works. But Ted Cruz is using this as an opportunity to create, you know, sound bites and points and looking tough and regulating the industry. Meanwhile, the people who are slamming these guys are also in bed with oil. They're in bed with these other industries, auto manufacturers, not naming Ted Cruz specifically, but these guys are propping up other businesses. They're listening to lobbyists, and here they are in front of tech acting like the big dogs and like challenging them for their left-leaning organizations. Meanwhile, you got a person like Jack Dorsey who looks like he has a 12-year-old's haircut with a giant beard. So it's total juxtaposition in terms of the different types of orientations. You have, you know, Ted Cruz or another senator who's looking super polished in their outfits. And the way that they're talking to each other, it's like we're not creating these bridges across these very important structures in our society. Twitter, Google, Facebook, all of these platforms are extremely influential in our society and are becoming almost like these not siloed, I guess. It's more like they're creating their own rules. They're creating their own practices. They're creating their own structures, their own communities, their own cultures within the United States.
Here's a good example of that. Uber and Lyft writing in Proposition 22 for California,
which is getting voted on right now.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, so we have this sort of partitioning of the world or of our country through potentially, like, say, IQ. But now we're also partitioning it based on these ideologies as well, and it's becoming more and more rampant. It's 1996, there wasn't social media. Now we have social media where if you lean a certain way, you are fed more and more things, and we're starting to partition ourselves.
Oh, yeah, the algorithms feed into it. Oh, you accidentally clicked on this? Well, we're going to pump you full of these ads and keep this bias going.
Oh,
But let me ask you this, though. So, we recently just had Amy Coney Barrett, whatever, the new justice that's been appointed, right? She's
HCB?
Yeah, Jesus. She's a conservative, right? She's appointed by the conservative group, the Republicans, the Senate. And this is an extremely conservative agenda with this, but it's a very detached action for a more socially liberal leaning society as we keep on progressing. America is becoming more liberal.
Yeah.
So the Senate has appointed this new conservative justice in this society that is far more socially liberal and continuing that trend to becoming more socially liberal. But yet they're still making these power plays to put in conservative members for justice, Senate, all these positions in the government, as you're saying, keeping it detached.
Mm-hmm.
So
I see.
I think the reason why this exists is predominantly a generational issue. We have, what's the average age of the Senate right now?
Probably pretty old.
It's pretty old. I mean, I'm going to look that up right now, but I think it's like north of 65.
Probably the House as well.
I bet
Maybe
the House is
so
probably
with the
less
House.
than the House, but the Senate for sure.
Maybe less so with the House because you have
like
538,
yeah,
538 representatives, I believe, and you have just more opportunities for the youth to get in and win races.
Yeah, it's also a lower bar. I mean, we talked about Sarah Jacobs and Georgette Gomez. It's like that bar wasn't that impressive, and so getting
the average age of members of the House is 57. And the Senate is 62.
Okay. So you have...
Yeah, they're pretty close.
Yeah. So you have a president who's in his 70s who, whether or not you believe he's a puppet president that's being controlled by the Republican Party or lobbyists, however that's interpreted. You have the Senate, who clearly is being controlled by the lobbyists and who have made their financial gains predominantly through lobbyist monies. And you have these ideals that are old, they're detached. Hollis, what's the average age of American citizens right now?
It's an interesting question.
I'm going to go with in the 40s. Probably mid 40s to low 40s if I had to throw a number at it. The baby boomer generation.
38. That's almost
38.
20 years.
That's the median age. I don't know if you want the average.
Yeah, I want the average. So you have the people
Still,
who are in
important
power,
as well.
who are of this generation with these archaic ideals, who are detached from the new industries of tech that's coming up and taking over, who I'm curious to know, and we probably would never know this, what the biases are and how those algorithms are written and how many people are being targeted for a liberal and how many people are being targeted for a conservative.
I don't think the algorithms definitely don't care. They just want more engagement. The goal is engagement.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what is it? Fox is probably doing their own marketing, you know, being able to pump into Facebook and Twitter and all these ones.
So, you're right. There's these... and I don't know if it's primarily generational, but let's use an example that I want to talk to about this current election, and specifically about Biden. You're talking about these traditional old practices that don't make sense. And when you say that, what comes to my mind are things like bureaucratic nepotism. Nepotism, giving people deals, backroom deals.
Good old boys club.
Good old boys club, financing through lobbyists. You shake hands, you make these deals, and you tell the American people, and you smile at them, and you say, I'm here for you. When I voted, I filled out my ballot, we mailed it in. I felt sick to my stomach knowing that Joe Biden was the presidential nominee. And I felt like 4 years ago, I realized that I needed to do a lot more to become more involved in this government, in civics. And 4 years is not a long time, but I'm hoping that more years from now, I will have more influence in my local civics. And I'm hoping that other people start doing this too. And that when we look at the Democratic nominee or the Republican nominee, that we can look at these people and be like, this is like a really great representation for the United States. And I'm looking at Joe Biden and I'm having a tough time, man. It seems like there's this older gentleman who is literally being puppeted by all these powers who are looking to just have somebody as the face so that they can continue the terrible practices that we keep doing and we keep cycling back and forth.
I strongly believe that it's the super PAC interests, which is why we have Biden, which is why we have Trump. It's
So-
super PAC interests.
Well, so
Let me give you
I'm
a
not
micro.
so sure Trump falls into that.
I agree with you.
But I think Trump bucked the whole system, but nobody can control him, and he's just his own thing of crazy that's causing his own issues.
I disagree. I contest that idea just by looking at Andrew Wheeler and his other appointees in his government.
So maybe Trump not, but the people that he's appointed, definite talking to lobbyists and making these deals. But hold on. I want to go back to Biden for a minute. The Hunter Biden story has become huge in the last few days. Obviously, we knew this was going to happen. They were storing this information. They're waiting for these last
How did
blows.
the Democrats not see this coming?
So I wonder, do you guys know much about Hunter Biden? Like what the big deal is?
Apparently, he sucks like a Hoover vacuum.
Yeah,
And I don't
guess
mean
he's
sucks
Dirt?
cocaine.
he
but
likes
that
to go
too.
skiing.
Yeah, he likes to ski on white powder.
Yeah, so, Hunter Biden has had a well-documented, this isn't secret news. This has been well known for a long time that this, I want to say kid, but he's actually in his 40s, who also got in a relationship with his now dead brother's wife. So that's a different thing. But anyway, so this guy has a drug problem, an ongoing drug problem. He's in his 40s. He says that he's kicked it. He was on this board in Ukraine that was clearly, it's obviously you're doing some corrupt shit. You're sitting on a board and getting paid tons of money to do nothing. My wager would be that Joe Biden is probably furious that his son's such a fuck up. Yet, when he was vice president, they, in the Obama administration, appointed him as some just go do XYZ for government, and he used it to make tons of money by being on a corrupt board. Why is it that, getting back to your whole traditions and these old ways of being, why is it Joe Biden can't be up front and be like, dude, my son's a fuck up?
Well,
You know what I mean? And it's tough because we don't get that from a Joe Biden. We don't get the transparency to recognize that his family's flawed, and it's okay because a lot of people's families are flawed.
I've actually seen some interviews with him, though, where he speaks to it. Not in great detail, but he doesn't say my son's a fuck.
No, right.
But he does say
I've had problems. My son has had
Yeah,
problems.
like-
He's overcome those problems, and I'm proud of him. That's the typical line that I hear from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But-
as a parent, I mean, I would probably say something similar to that too.
Yeah.
You know, he has had a history that we're both not proud of, and I hope you know, he can find his way. But like, what at a certain point, you know, your kid's an adult now, and they're no longer really your responsibility, and all
Yeah.
you can try to do is the best thing you can to make sure they don't destroy their lives, you know? So like, for me, I don't know, you know, that's part of Biden's personal life, that where it comes into politics is like, all right, now you've got Hunter Biden sitting on this board.
That's the
It obviously is because of Biden, or because of his closeness to Biden, right? Like, who's to say though that organization didn't go straight to Hunter and say,
Oh hell
you know,
yeah!
with
They
your
knew weakness.
experience and who you know and your connections, we'd love to have you join our board. We know you can help us in a lot of ways. And there, as far as I know, there's no evidence that any of that has come from Joe or been or affected Joe, or, you know, like, they are different people, and so it could be completely happening independent of Joe, and it's just another thing his kid is doing that's messing with Joe Biden. You know,
my gut says that you are 1,000% correct.
I hope I'm right on that. I don't know.
That's what my gut says. I don't know that for fact. I don't
like Biden's like record squeaky clean. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
like, I don't know of any deep controversies with him. Whereas you can look at Trump, and you only need to go back a week to find 10 new things that are like, all of that's shady.
Yeah.
You know, and like, he still hasn't released his tax returns. Like, he hasn't paid taxes to the U.S. in decades. And like, I get that's being a smart businessman, but also, as president, you should be leading by example of we are in this together.
Yes.
And we collectively pay taxes into a pool that we decide together how these funds are distributed. And the last thing you want is the person sitting at the head of that saying, yeah, I don't pay taxes, it's smart. It's like, what? That's completely misaligned with everything we're all doing together. The reason we have this incredible society and have been one of the greatest countries in the world is because we found a way to stitch together 50 different places and different opinions and different cultures into one unified force. And somehow we've lost that completely, where it's all for one.
Obama said it best in 2016 when he was handing over the presidency to Trump. He said, we must remember we're all on the same team. We're not Democrats first. We're not Republicans first. We are Americans first.
This is it, man. And I feel like the president has... This is the only reason I'm okay with Biden, even though he's super old. I know nothing's going to change from him. Is I think from a moral perspective, what he tries to accomplish, even if it's in his weird political ways, is a vision that is closer to the America that I want to be known for. I don't want to be known as a country where our leader is getting caught up in lawsuits with porn stars. I don't want to be a part of a country where our leader is disrespectful to minorities and dismisses tough questions from journalists just because they don't want to deal with it. Who says crazy lies like I had the most people at my inauguration than anyone's ever in history. Like, he was lying from like the
lies.
first
I mean,
day.
he has done more for Black Americans than Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, like-
well, maybe not Abraham Lincoln.
Just like, no, like that, like, he's supposed to be making complex policy decisions, and you can't trust him on something that you can look at a photo and disprove him on. Like, how are you supposed to run a country like that? And God, I hope we wake up to just how bad this guy is. And I get all these other politicians have their hands in all these pots and whatever, but like,
But you got to understand, his base doesn't care about that. His base cares about the xenophobic issues that he is clearly, on that particular side of. He is,
and they care
yeah,
about Hunter Biden. So that brings me back to this whole thing, and I asked you, like, why can't he be forthright about this? And now I want to shift it, be like, why do we have to condemn the man for the actions? It's like it's like the sins of the father,
yeah,
but now
sins
it's
of
verse.
my
The
father
sins
are my own.
Yeah,
of my
now
I
it's
just
the
wonder
sins of
if
the
there
son.
really is a connection between what Hunter Biden's doing and his dad. Because if you run in those circles, and this is what's happened with Trump's presidency, is like anyone who's even remotely close to Trump has been approached by lots of people to try to lobby Trump in some direction. So if your dad's been in politics for 50 years, yeah, you can bet there's a lot of people who are trying to get in Joe Biden's ear, and they can make deals with his son without him that he doesn't like.
Yeah.
But look, the bigger issue that I see is, yeah, okay, there's some corruption on the part that Biden's son is on a board in fucking Europe somewhere. I get it. Ukraine, and an oil board, right? But what about the issue that Trump's kids have fucking been robbing people in America? Like Trump University, Ivanka Trump.
Yeah, Trump.
All the little bullshit schemes that the Trumps have been doing to steal from the common American. And none of the Republicans, not even the Democrats, are really pointing that out. I think that the only group that was the Lincoln Project who pointed that out, which is obviously the Democrat,
So it makes me wonder, we have all of these elements of our society, yet it's so difficult to actually change the direction of these things because you have entrenched systems, and it would take so many people to adopt new practices. So it brings me back to like testifying. Why do we still have testifying? It seems like it's just a showboating thing to show the American people that I'm doing my job and I'm going to come down on this and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to impeach the president because he is failing to do things in Ukraine. And then I'm going to sit here and say, well, he may be not very right, but your son, Hunter Biden, was corrupt. And it's just like we don't have enough people who, especially the audience, who stops cheering.
I don't think that there's
cheering.
I don't think that there's an issue with still having the practice of testifying. I think that the issue is that the power grab just isn't in the balance of those who are on the panels, who are operating the panels for the testified cases. So, like, look at Comey. When Comey testified...
Comey,
yeah.
Comey.
FBI. Mm-hmm. So when he testified, the House Democrats couldn't do shit with that. It was just something that they wanted to be able to put in their toolbox for a later date, given the opportunity that they could use that testify and the evidence that was coming with that against Trump. They can, but not with the Senate in the way. And the blue wave happened after... the big blue wave sweeping in the midterm election happened after that testify. So even so, they still lost. The Democrats, they still lost and weren't able to use that tool. Had they won, they might have been able to do more with that case. So I think it's just, it's the balance right now is too heavy on the Republican side especially with Mitch McConnell being able to filibuster everything. So I don't know. Maybe some archaic practices, gerrymandering. I think that's an archaic practice that needs to go. That's a corrupt motherfucking practice.
Yep.
And that, I don't remember when gerrymandering started. I want to say it was like 1812 or something like that. Maybe 1830s.
I guess I'm just seeing people who are part of the system who aren't looking at how the system operates and genuinely. Not how the system operates in my favor, but how the system operates to produce something more clean.
Well, I don't think that we're going to have a smooth operating machine until we do a couple really basic and fundamental things that we see in our generation as a necessity. Term limits and lobbyist money coming out.
Why does it take Andrew Yang to come up with something as silly as what was it, Patriot points?
No, he had democracy dollars.
Yeah, the democracy dollars.
I don't think that's silly at all.
The name's
Brilliant.
silly. It's a brilliant idea. Why?
Yeah.
Why is a candidate for office speaking about this, and the majority of these House and Senate members aren't?
With the coronavirus stimulus. Overwhelming amount of people got democracy dollars in the form of a stimulus package to prevent the economy from crashing.
Democracy dollars is different.
Totally different.
This isn't the $1,000.
No, that's UBI.
That's UBI.
Okay, that's
democracy
universal basic
dollars-
income.
Yeah.
So
Patriot points. I
wanna
like that
jump
one better.
on your point though, like you got to get the lobbyist money out of
Mm-hmm.
elections, right? Or at least have some way to offset it. I think you also need to dramatically overhaul the what's it called when you vote for the
Electoral
people
college.
you're going to vote for?
Primary.
Primaries. You got to look at what our primaries produced.
I like
Trump
ranked
and
choice.
Biden.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. So clearly that system is broken completely.
Yeah.
We need to completely overhaul the primary system.
And how do we fix that?
Well, there's actually
It's
some
the
and
lobbyist money that has to come out.
And then you also need ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
You need ranked choice voting because
I'm curious how
so
Maine
that
looks
your
right now.
your Joe Jorgensen vote isn't thrown away.
Mhm.
Like you need ranked choice voting so you can get away from the, I'm on the right or I'm on the left and I'm not going to throw my vote away. So a kind of combination of all these things. But the realization I've really come to is if you want to fix all of this stuff, the inputs into the system that we're all bickering about, is it Trump or Biden or whatever, they're not going to do it. And
Bingo.
We got to fix the system and change the system, and then the inputs will act differently when they're in it.
The only way to do that is to get out there and vote for representatives that are going to be able to speak to that. And I think that
I challenge you on that. I don't agree with that. I think it's not enough to vote. I think we actually have to do more.
Yeah,
pick up a gun and go and storm. I'm down.
That could be.
Who's got some extras? Raise your hand.
So let me explain what democracy dollars are. So I love this idea of democracy dollars. So it's basically for each election, what you do is you give every U.S. citizen $100 that can be spent on like a political party or like a candidate or a party, whatever. So basically what you're doing is you got 225 million eligible voters. You give each one of them $100. So you've basically got, what is it? I don't know what, $200 billion. I'm bad at math. $200 billion now flooding into politics that is not controlled by lobbyists. So right now your lobbyist money is, I don't know, $5 billion.
Yeah.
So you're just tidal waving the lobbyists, where now your local politician can go to their local constituency and pull a ton of money by winning over local voters instead of having to go and suck dick of every rich person in their neighborhood.
So
why is a presidential candidate coming up with better ideas than we're hearing from the people who we actually
Good idea, and it's use it or lose it. So if you don't spend your $100,
but you're missing something very important here. Lobbyists will attack the common person to persuade them to go for the candidate in their interest.
For sure.
Sure, they'll try, but when you've got a 10-to-1 amount of money being held by the people, that's
the uneducated people who will follow a Facebook ad relentlessly and loyally.
I mean, it's true. Like the whole.
But would you
Facebook
rather have a
segmenting
marketplace of ideas battle that out with people who have more money than the people who have all the resources?
I'm a huge proponent. Like, I don't think America's made up of dumb people. I think we're actually.
Well, 50% of them are pretty dumb.
We already saw that 50% or more are not average educated.
Just because,
right?
no, like, I mean, 85% of us.
Scott's IQ.
But just because people are voting for Trump or not going to college, I don't think means they're not intelligent. It just means they've been focusing their lives on different things. If I grew up on a farm and the thing that's important is making sure that I'm harvesting properly and whatever, that's different from the millionaire kid who has to learn how to organize his dad's capital.
So just to be clear, the bell curve never says that you're smart if you go to college. It's definitely not saying that. Just to be clear, and also, education does not equal
and also, just to be clear, Trump's past political agenda, or whatever the fuck it was, did not completely help out those who are farm kids or those in the city.
No, and I don't know the specifics deep enough to really like get into all of that. But I feel passionate that it's important not to brand one of the parties just because people are voting for Trump as dumb, because I don't think it's true. I think they're just fed up.
I don't think that people who are voting for Trump are dumb. I think that you're right. I think that they have a ideal system that is aligned with Trump.
Yeah.
I just don't think that when you have somebody who says something like, "Oh, Trump has done more for America and is better president than the past presidents," that to me is a stupid statement. Those are fucking ridiculous statements.
I can't disagree with that.
But
I think Trump has said so many things.
But I want to go back to Trump's base is xenophobic, racist, conservative.
When you say racist, what do you mean? Do you mean like I voted for Trump and fuck Chinese people? Like, is that what is that what you're saying?
I think that we see this by actions, by not disavowing racism, by not saying, well, why are you supporting the Proud Boys? Why are you not condemning violence?
So you're saying they're not necessarily racist.
I think it's closet racism.
Okay. So a closet racist is like, I don't want to openly admit I'm racist, but I'm pretty racist.
I think closet racist is like, you know what? Grab your wallet when you walk past these black people. They're going to rob us.
Without actually voicing it, you just
yeah.
So I have an issue with the closet racism idea and how people perceive the racism. I don't want to get like too off track with what you're saying about the Trump voters, but I want to read that How to Be an Anti-Racist book just because I need to see what the other side is saying about racism. But I don't fully buy that. I think everyone has prejudices. I have my own personal prejudices, but if I take 5 minutes to sit there and talk to somebody, like I'm not thinking about those things, right? Like 100%. You might have an initial reaction, but you are an intelligent person and can overcome gut reactions or gut feelings or false signals that your brain has all the time. I tell you, sometimes at the corner of my eye, I think I see a witch, and I look over and it's a fucking stump. Like, it takes me a second, but I just have to come back and make sure that I'm not just reacting to everything. And I think that not having a reaction that has some sort of race-based thing is impractical. Everyone does it.
But what I'm saying is that Trump has created a base by having a platform to say, let's build a wall and keep all the Mexicans out.
He's partitioned. They're getting better at partitioning these bases, these groups, these politics.
I want to do a whole podcast on this separation of our country by values, and that's something I thought a lot about when I was on my road trip.
Now, I can't remember if you read it or at least heard it from John Haidt.
I didn't read his book, but I listened to the audiobook version.
The audiobook, and that was called, it was the ideology one, right? Where people are partitioning themselves based on personality, which tends to influence their ideologies or political orientations, correct?
I'm blanking on the name of the book right now, but it was a phenomenal breakdown of the value systems that are held by each party. Mm-hmm. And it basically said there's kind of 6 core values, and that the Democrats are really good at speaking to 2 of those, and the Republicans are really good at speaking to all 6.
Probably, yeah.
And but it was the first time that it really kind of opened my eyes to what some of these value differences are, and he gave very clear examples as to why they're defending that value choice. Mm-hmm. So Democrats are very big on I think, what was it? It was like fairness and caring or something. And if you listen to the messaging, it's like, you know, oh, all these like, you know, minorities are being treated poorly, and we need to, you know, help make community college affordable for everybody to level the playing field.
So rent control.
Yeah, and so it's a lot of talking around fairness and caring type thing. I'm probably butchering it, but it's something like that.
The liberal utopia.
Yeah, and then
it's more along the lines of how Todd Gloria communicated. We talked about that a little bit. Is that the way Todd Gloria voted and the way that he articulated some of his thoughts is he's a very considerate person, and he's definitely in that mode of kind fairness. We have to XYZ.
Look at every Democrat candidate. It's the same. It's the same talking points. It's all the same stuff. But what they leave out that the Republicans hit on are things like, I forget, but God, it's like
order.
Order.
I don't know what the specific names are.
One of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's
probably.
Like that.
I mean, personality-wise, it'd be like conscientiousness.
Order, fairness.
But fairness looks different to them.
Yeah. God, what were they? The book's called The Righteous Mind.
The Righteous Mind.
Yeah, and it's a great read, and I just got it on audiobook, so I didn't have to work.
With that partitioning, I wonder if there's anything that we can really do, because the people who are partitioning are people. And what I mean by that is that the forces that are pushing us to partition are forces driven by people, and people are not stopping.
So I think what's really happened here is we've lost the news media completely. And we've got an ecosystem where we've been running this experiment for about 10 years, where the AI systems will start to feed back information that you like, and you can kind of choose your news path. And so we're seeing is this has been running for 10 years now, and it's just been slowly changing the narrative for each group to their personal choice and distorting the reality to each group over time. And so it was kind of the slow boiling of the frog.
This is an experiment for 10 years. I would say that the Koch brothers have been doing this for years.
Well, I'm just talking about in terms of Facebook and Google serving you news and information.
They're doing it in a new way.
Tailored to you.
Okay.
You know, so
it's just the new kid on the block, that's all it is.
Yeah, that's true, but
same shit.
Yeah, just the new kids on the block.
But it's your access to information. So like, you know, before everyone kind of got fed their news from the news station, and that was filtered by whatever, and they made what seemed like an effort to be non-partial and fact-based. But then once you got rid of all those gatekeepers, and now anyone can post any news content, and then Google and Facebook can go recommend news content that's tailored to you specifically, you're removing all of this previous safeguards. And so then you start getting into these situations where like Facebook and Google are being held accountable by Congress, where they're saying like, you're spreading fake news, you're perpetuating these biases, right? And they're trying to persecute them for it. And they're saying, we don't have a responsibility, or they used to be saying, we don't have a responsibility to determine, like, you know, like we don't want to infringe on free speech, but they've had to kind of bend to that because they're just now what's replacing these old news channels.
Yep.
So they're essentially the same outlet or resource.
Jack Dorsey replied to Ted Cruz saying he didn't believe that Twitter could influence elections.
Yeah, and maybe Twitter,
yeah, maybe you're giving me that look.
Whoa.
But the combination of Twitter, Google, and Facebook, yeah, that can.
That's kind of what the argument was. He's like, Twitter by itself, there's options. There's other outlets for people, but it's like,
did you guys see the little mini-series, the drama that Russell Crowe did about Roger Ailes, the loudest voice?
No.
It's exactly what you're talking about, what you're describing, only it's the Fox News generation of how Fox News and Roger Ailes throughout the years of him being in charge of Fox News has created this, this mentality that he wanted to have.
Ooh.
And all the followers follow him. And what we're going to see with social media, what we are seeing with social media. So
this is why
I
I'm
found
thinking.
the morals, the 5 moral foundations that he talks about in his book.
What are they?
So you've got, he talks about them as like taste buds, but so you've got care and harm. So that means like values of kindness, gentleness, and nurture. You've got fairness and cheating, when we help or are kind to others, and values of reciprocation. You've got loyalty and betrayal. So like loyalty is one that the Republican Party kind of talks about, but you never hear Democrats talk about it all. Just kind of like,
I think that the Republicans, when they pound the drum, everybody follows the same direction to the same tune.
Authority and subversion. So like authority is one. You always hear Democrats talk about like changing social structures, changing this, and Republicans are typically, they respect the idea that there's an authority figure and we work within that.
Social order.
And sanctity and degradation. So really it's care, fairness, loyalty, authority, and sanctity. And so those are the kind of 5 taste buds.
This is part of this is why I wouldn't be surprised in our lifetime if we see real bids for secession.
It's quite feasible.
Considering the direction this country is going, I wouldn't be surprised if it breaks up into 2, 3, 4, 5 different segments that is loosely tied together by some federation. But the way that we keep going, it's almost, China has broken up a bunch of times and then got back together.
All empires have.
All empires have.
We are an empire.
We are an empire that keeps trying to expand. And I just wouldn't be surprised if we're reaching this tipping point because we keep partitioning ourselves. More and more blue states are becoming predominantly blue. We look at California. It always votes blue, but it's partitioned by this deep red in other areas that are not as populated.
I made a bet back in high school, so a long time ago, that it's still going, that we will see this in our lifetime.
Wait, are you holding this person accountable to the
We
bet?
talk about it all the time. Yeah, we talk about it all the time.
What is the timeline for this bet? It seems pretty impractical.
Our life. Within our life. If he dies first, he loses. Fucker. Yeah.
What is it?
Just that the United States is going to be not the same form of government that we see now. It's going to be disbanded as we see it right now. It's not going to be the same format. It's going to become something completely different.
And it's unfortunate, but I think it's completely preventable. And it's completely preventable by the very people who have the most influence over the system. And that's everybody. So we like to look at these senators, we like to look at these Congress people, but it's your policy advisors. It's the people on your campaign trails. It's the people who are doing the back end work on the government every single day. The tens of thousands of people who are pushing ideological shit down other people's throats slowly and slowly. It's the micro transactions that we have as people as we start talking and we start shutting things down.
So I think this divide is coming from, it's a result of the breakdown of our economy, essentially. Like, we're seeing people who are not doing well doing worse, and people who are doing really well doing much better. And so the middle class is essentially just eroding and very quickly. And so people are feeling like things aren't right, from an economic standpoint. Like our chance of being better off than our parents is like less than 50% now, and we're the first generation.
And our chance of being in a single marriage without divorce is a lot lower than our parents.
We're not having kids. These are indicators of an unhealthy society.
I wouldn't say unhealthy, but the stability of the past is no longer applying to today.
Another one is how much a CEO makes compared to the average worker.
Exactly.
320 times the amount of an average worker.
That's
what
insane.
the CEO is.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Insane.
insane. Like, and how that person sleeps at night, knowing that they make that much more than their lowest paid employee is crazy to me. Like, that person should feel bad about what
I
they're
don't know
doing.
about that, because at the same time, that person doing something super low is also not contributing to the success of the company. I agree that they should be
No, and
making
that executive is
300%.
Like, I mean, like, it's crazy. Like, yes, he's making, or she is making decisions, but like, it's too unequal. It's just too unequal. And so I think why we're seeing this giant divide is that our way of life is disintegrating in front of us, and we're pointing fingers all over the place.
No one's stopping.
And that's why, and I always come back to this, like, I really like a lot of Yang's platform. Sorry for being talking about it, but like, that's why I love the idea of UBI, is it helps reduce this stress on the middle class and the lower class, so people can start making decisions that are healthier for them and try to like get out of this hole.
Yeah.
I think that we most certainly are heading into a direction that the rift between Democrats and Republicans and conservatives and liberal, we are seeing two different United States, essentially. I think that we're heading into the direction of that split. But what the real tipping point is going to be is when we actually see a real crisis, a real pandemic. And I don't want to downplay COVID. I don't want to downplay the economic crash in 2006.
Yeah, people think this shit was the worst thing that happened. It's like, bro,
but
it
it's
can get
not.
worse.
What if we had an actual real World War III? That is when boundaries and territories and people really fortify and switch sides and fortify and like dig into their beliefs and dig into the trenches for stuff.
That might help. Like, if there was a World War III, we'd be like, oh snap, okay, we gotta forget about
no.
this.
But look, COVID was supposed to do that.
COVID
but COVID just
didn't
accelerated everything. That's like
COVID,
made our lives difficult.
Don't get me wrong, COVID's a scary thing, but COVID's not redrawing boundaries.
Yeah.
There's travel
also,
that's limited. There's some border control that's enforced, but COVID is for most Americans. Life was put on pause, and it's still everyday normal life for them. Like, certain things were put on pause, but this isn't like going to war and actually seeing, war with an equal adversary and seeing the world change. This is not the same.
I think a proper president would have taken COVID as a unifying adversary and said, here in the U.S., we are going to prove how incredible we are at dealing with adversity. We're the best in the world at it. And we're going to come together and watch. We're going to crush, we're going to do better at beating COVID than any other country. Watch us. Join me in this. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. Let's effing do this thing. And I think that's what a good president should do. Instead of downplaying it and saying, like, oh, it doesn't exist. It's like COVID. I don't know. Like, whatever.
I mean, you're just highlighting the election's going on right now. Just to give you guys an update, it is.
Oh, yeah. What's happening?
Yeah. Currently, we're at 131 delegates for Joe Biden, 98 for Donald Trump.
Whoa.
And right now, Joe Biden has 48.2% of the vote. Donald Trump has 50.3% of the vote.
Wait, so you're saying Biden's getting more delegates?
Biden's got the electoral, but Trump's got the populace.
It's like the
So
opposite
far.
of whatever.
So
So
wouldn't
far.
that be some fucking ironic shit if Biden barely won the electoral, but Trump got the popular?
That would be
What kind of
unbelievable.
hissy fit do you think Trump would throw for that?
Oh my God, I love it.
So I think you're getting at something that's like, look, we just have a divisive president. And maybe Obama, you could consider him as a divisive president, but I don't think he tried to instigate division. I think he was divisive because people made him divisive.
I agree with that.
I remember people, when he was running for president in Salt Lake City, seeing pictures of him pop up with, Nazi mustaches.
God, I remember Mitch McConnell. I'm going to stop everything that he puts forward.
Yeah.
No matter what, it's going to be stopped.
And unfortunately, we get into this weird game where we keep doing the same thing to the other side. At Mount Woodson right now, someone went through all the signs and wrote Trump equals KKK and then said, go vote. And it's like, vote them all out. And it's like, dude, you're doing the same. This is what I'm saying. Like, in terms of the partitioning, the people who are partitioning are people. People are making people bad or worse or the enemy. And it's like we all can't just stop and just be like, hey, wait. What are we doing? What are we doing right now? Can we just go grab a beer? Can we just stop this? It's like no one wants to be willing to be the first one to stop and say.
I had a dream last night. That it was a political ad by a mayoral candidate in San Diego who, instead of bashed the other candidate, said, voting for this candidate is a good thing, but I can do better than that candidate for these reasons. Yes, this candidate did all of this, and it's wonderful. We support those actions. We support those decisions, but I'm going to do it better. Running on that type of a platform. Like, kudos to them.
Yeah, I would say so. That's a weird dream.
Kudos to the incumbent, but I'm going to do better. Something along that line.
That'd be interesting.
So I want to start wrapping this up, and I want to touch on something that I hit. I think it was last time. Do you guys remember when I was talking about regulating the national parks?
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Okay. So I said this like big picture, like ideal, right? Of like,
merit system.
You gotta, the merit system.
Earn badges. It's like the Boy Scouts or something.
Right. So it's a ridiculous concept, but it's an exercise for me in trying to understand how you can organize human behavior, where you're designing a system, where you're trying to figure out how you can have healthy inputs going in, meaning you want people who are engaging in the outdoors to be good stewards of the outdoors, to engage in a way that's sustainable, that leaves the place better, conservation, etc. Are you aware that Red Rocks, they implemented a new time reservation system? So Red Rocks, because of all the traffic it gets, beautiful spot, they have created a reservation system in order to access the parks.
So they followed Mesa Rim.
It's not COVID related though. So before they tried like closing the gates, but that created traffic. Well, now it's like time reservation system, and no one's given priority. It's just like, it is what it is. You get in when you get in. But there are people who are going there to just like walk around the parking lot and like take a picture. Versus there are people who are going deep in and really like exploring and doing these really cool things. And those are people who are oftentimes more like committed to the nature of it. They're not going to go there to graffiti.
No trace, yeah.
So I was, you're like, well, how do you even do this merit badge program? So that's ridiculous. Okay. A lot of these politicians, they say, we're going to do this. We're going to organize for better housing, but they don't lay out a plan. They don't have a methodology that you can follow that's simple and easy to read.
There's also no tracking mechanism and no accountability.
I want to show you a basic plan that I came up with for how you could go about trying to regulate an area. Just a basic plan, okay? So let's say you have an area like, let's say Red Rocks. It's a huge area. However, there's likely specific areas that are congregating common for people. Like people congregate in these areas. There's high traffic areas, right?
The loop.
So you get money into the system, you budget, and you do a study for, let's say, a couple years of key managed areas. So you have volunteers or paid people. I would probably, so this is like an entire system that I got going. So let me just do the system. So you have a study. They survey the land and identify common areas for trash locations, so like where trash is typically being found. So the people who are running the study are like marking that and indicating it. They're also cleaning it up too. So they're not just counting it and tallying it, but they're cleaning it up.
Earning points for their own merit system.
You beat me to it. Yes. Hold on. They're calculating human activity, how many campsites, how many people do they see, how many unique visitors, blah, blah, blah. They're doing trash identification, what kind of trash are going in there. And then they're doing perimeter measurements. What is the perimeter that people are typically going in? Like, what is the specs of the area? And then you can randomly select dates throughout the range of the season that it's actually accessible. And you start like, okay, I'm going to be here for 3 nights. Then I'm going to take a weekend. So you keep doing this study over and over and over again, and you collect these metrics. Well, to do that, you need monitors. You need people who are actually going to do this work. Well, this program would incentivize people who want to earn badges by providing conservative work. And remember, I mentioned that if you earn a badge or if you earn certain merits, you gain greater access to certain parts of the park. So you get better access to cooler campsites. Maybe you get better facilities. Maybe you get priority system in some of those like timed like you can't get access to the park, but you get extra access if you have a certain level of whatever. So this is an entry level. It's paid. You get health insurance. It'd be a little stiffer because oftentimes the people that are being recruited are off doing like other outdoor activities, but you get health insurance, paid accommodations like camping, food, budget gear, and a free pass to the outdoors, to that area. So you essentially, someone comes up to you, Hollis, and it's like, for 1 month out of the next year, you get free access to the national park. You do XYZ, all expenses are paid. Pretty sweet. Total duration that you have to put in is a month, and then you get like a little merit point, right? You can also use this to give minorities priority or promotion to enjoy the outdoors, because that's a huge issue right now with the outdoors, is helping minorities gain access to the outdoors. So this is how I'd regulate it. First, you do a study. You figure out where the problems are. You figure out where all the issues are with trash and human activity, and you start there with a baseline study and provide people an opportunity to do conservation work throughout that process. So I haven't even got to now what the actual regulation is. I'm just telling you, like, first steps first, do a study. Understand what the problem is. And enable people to win through that process as well.
I like this, except for one flaw.
Okay.
I think that when you have we'll say like your base person who's got zero merits, I think to recruit more base individuals and get them to become more interested in being a higher merited, more awarded conservation participant, I think that you need education. And I think that the education that you would have would be diminished when you have that type of a system. So the reason why I got into rock climbing, for instance, is because somebody took me outside to go rock climbing. I didn't know that I loved rock climbing. I wouldn't have loved rock climbing had I not been thrust into it. And I think that for most people, just getting out and being part of any national park and seeing its awe and its mystery and its, the spectacular things that you see, negligent on litter, negligent on how to care for the environment, they didn't have that experience before, and they're littering. Now that they're seeing it and being able to partake in more, they're more conscientious of not littering, leaving less trace.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe in your system, part of the merit is to bring somebody new who's never been out to a national park and give them an education, and they get merits.
That could be an activity.
Yeah, that could be an activity. That could be a
Come
program.
join Sanon's National Park multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
It's not a pyramid scheme.
I
It's
think
multi-level marketing.
Sanon should buy some land and roll this out.
And the only reason why I do this is because to me this is like a thought exercise.
I can just
it's
see
a
this
thought
now.
Exercise and
I can just see this now. Sanon buys a parcel in Valley of the Moon area. I need a little servant.
Yeah, totally. If only I could find
I want to do a
young,
case study, little
impressionable-
servant. Go pick up trash and document how much trash you've picked up.
How would
I
you like
provide
to
you
be
opportunities
house-
to the outdoors.
I provide you a tiered system for leveling up for opportunities.
4 pieces of trash.
I will
Grant
sponsor.
you 3 Unity points. As you progress up the Unity scale, you gain access to the backyard. But for now, you haven't proved yourself capable of seeing the backyard.
Yeah, you have to stay next to where the trash can is.
It will take you 4,000 volunteer hours. And then you can pick up leaves in my backyard.
Yeah, the potential for abuse is definitely written into the system, but I didn't explain that part. But yeah, I think
I'm a tough sell on this one, but I enjoy the thought experiment. I'm with you. I mean, if you're gonna make any sort of change, getting a good baseline is like step one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great. And that's a good method for getting a baseline. I'm sure you get lots of volunteers, and that's awesome.
There's also a budget component too. Like you'd have to actually I provided benefits. I said.
I think you could raise a ton of money for the national parks really quickly just with good marketing.
I'm curious. I want to say there's some public beach access or some private beach access that does something like this, where it polices individuals a little bit more, restricts access. You can't get in unless you've. Maybe I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but maybe there's an association out there who's got pseudo public access.
I just think that and I didn't even mention what the regulation would be. Right? I said that we needed to conduct an intelligent study. So I haven't even thought through what the regulations could be because you need some of this information first. Where's the trash going? How many people are going there?
Mm-hmm.
I could come up with like a theoretical, let's say the data comes out and this is what it says. I can come up with that. That'll probably be one of, I just like doing this type of stuff. So it'll be a thought experiment for me. But I just thought that we've seen all these elections and all these like campaigns and people explaining all these great things that they plan to do, but they provide no plan, no outlet, no description of how they can even conceptualize how to get this done. You need to know what kind of freaking trash is going into your park if you want to clean it up. What kinds of trash are going into your park? Who are the types of people who are doing, like picking up trash? Like when you're collecting this type of information about people and who they are, I would train these survey collectors to give me identification of these people. Do they wear tattoos? Do they wear this? Do they do that? Who is littering? Who is participating in the park? Demographics, age, race, families. There's so many things that you can collect in terms of data that you can then start looking at and then figure out a way how you can regulate the park.
It'd be funny if you found like a predominant amount of people who littered had like tattoos. And then you just put a billboard up. Don't be a tattooed Bob. Don't litter bug. Don't be a litter Bob. I'm just imagining some of the marketing.
I really wouldn't ask somebody to capture whether or not they had tattoos or not. But
was
it'd
it
be
a
like
neck
just
tattoo?
demographic.
Was it an arm tattoo?
Yeah. It was a tramp stamp butterfly tattoo.
You know what my favorite tattoo is? Like it cracks me up every time I see it. Big lips on the neck on a little guy. I love that. I see that so often.
Why would they do that?
It's so funny because I'm just imagining like you have giant lips tattooed on your neck. Are you like into big women and you're a little guy?
Does it mean something?
What does it mean?
Is it like a gang sign? Like a
I
tear
think
on
it's
a
just.
cheek?
I think it's just somebody who's like I want to have a tribute to my girlfriend or something. I don't know. I don't know
like
anybody.
I know where you should put those lips.
I don't know anybody who actually has them. I just see them often.
Wow.
Pay attention to it. But it's actually like when you see the pair of lips, it's grossly large lips.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, these are huge. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, this is
grossly large lips. Like
sometimes
a fucking hippo got a hold of you.
They put a skull in the lip.
Like kiss and death, man.
Why does a tattoo? What does a tattoo on your lips? Okay, wait. Nah, it doesn't have any cool meaning.
No,
well,
I'm sure it does.
I'm gonna keep working on this proposal.
Yeah, keep trying to socialize parks there, Sonora.
Yeah.
Are we?
Well, I told you my plan. Like, there's a way that you can socialize industry in a way that you actually make the economy of social interaction a factor and not just finance.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. I always get a little like heebie-jeebies when you start like earning like I don't know, like citizen points or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's a great thing.
When do you earn citizen points?
Oh, I don't know. I just made it up, but like
I guess that would be your credit score.
Yeah, I guess that's your like citizen debt points.
Yeah, I guess we do that. Social standings.
I don't know if that's a good thing because
you
have some van life dirtbaggers who probably have terrible credit scores but clean up every piece of garbage that they see when they're in a national park.
This is true, and they might be bad at volunteering for national park projects.
Yeah.
Right.
I would be terrible at volunteering
So-
for a national park.
This
I
is
would be
why.
against all of
This
it.
is why. At least when I think of socialism, what I think of is that you're creating an economy that is based on the social value of things, not on finance. And I don't believe that you should have a system that is squarely focused on one type of economy. I think you need a variety of economies. And a social economy is very important to the well-being of any organization.
I'm giving you Andrew Yang's book. You're gonna be like, holy moly. He has like a whole couple of chapters on, as you bring in universal basic income, how do you incentivize types of social work?
I think we should email Andrew Yang and see if he'll come on the podcast.
That's a great idea. He
Yeah.
has Yang Speaks, which is a great podcast.
Oh, I started his own.
Yeah.
Let's go Thorn.
Maybe we should go be on his podcast.
We should invite him on our podcast and introduce him to our listener.
No, what we could we could invite ourselves into his podcast.
Yeah, let's try.
Yeah. We could do a podcast off of every episode that he does and just talk about his podcast.
That's a good idea. And then
It blows my mind how much on YouTube is just people talking about other people's videos. It is literally the most asinine type of content where
Yeah.
you're not creating content, you're just commenting on content.
Even like a 5-minute clip.
It just
People commenting on just something silly and
Yeah.
stupid.
just
but-
piggybacking on their wave of traffic.
Can you imagine what Joe Rogan said in this clip? Let's watch it together and let's comment. You're like, dude, what the hell, man? Like this.
Yeah.
They've got 10.5 million viewers.
Or they've got $10,000 worth of equipment, and you're like, why?
Crazy times.
Well, shit, guys, we're gonna know by the end of the night what direction this country is heading in, and I bet by the end of the week, this shit's gonna look crazy.
Yeah, so before we
Yeah.
end, what do you guys think is going to happen? Like the next 2 nights, the next week, the next 3 months?
Well, to me, I'll just dive in real quickly. I haven't been paying close attention to what states are going where, but just from what Sanan just shared, it sounds like Biden might have this thing, and it might actually be relatively clean.
I think we saw in 2016 that Hillary was in the lead at the beginning for a
You
long
need
shot, but
200
Trump and the red wave came through and
How many
started
delegates do you need?
270. Yeah, 270, and there's 538 total.
Yeah. And then, so, I mean, who knows? I
So
don't know.
some crazy numbers that were thrown out there though at the beginning of today. Almost 100 million people have voted early, and there's an expected of another 68 million or some number like that, like to come in still.
Dude,
That's
it's
more participation than any other election.
And they're
in
gonna
history.
say, "Oh, it's because people were motivated." I'm like, dude, no, it's because you gave everybody freaking mail ballots.
I think that's part of it.
Big part
You
of it.
freaking
Yeah.
why haven't we done this
That's a big
before?
part. Yeah.
That's a big part of it. But mail-in ballots aren't 100% alien. It's not a new idea.
No,
So
this is old technology.
Even
it's it's mail. It's
mail-in
mail.
ballots even happened back in the Civil War, like during that time frame.
Yeah, I think it's like part of why there's a delegate system in the first place was like it was too hard to count all the state votes, so they had to
Sure.
like, tally them up there, and then like a dude on a horse rode it over to the next place and was like, "This is how we're voting."
But the sheer
Like, I think
numbers,
there's
though,
actually some piece of that.
the sheer numbers of how many people have voted, it's insane how many people actually voted. And,
Yeah.
the numbers obviously still aren't finalized, but
We're gonna see, man.
I can't remember
yeah.
what the number was. I just looked this up. It's like 140 million Americans was like the previous record. It was like 62% of the population that was eligible to vote voted,
Oh, that's eligible to vote.
and we're like trending to crush that. Is what it looks like.
yeah, we have crushed that. So it's pretty gnarly to see. It's a good thing, it's a really good thing.
I hope it's clean enough that Trump shamed.
I
Like he is like the loser. You know what I mean?
Uncontested loser. It'd be nice to see that, but I don't think it's going to happen in the way that it looks. I mean,
No.
if he's got the popular vote right now, trending that way,
Dude, if he
that
wins
just
the
gives
popular
him
vote,
that
but
just gives
loses-
him ammunition to keep
Yes.
on putting up the fight to not leave office,
if he loses,
as well as all of his
I don't
followers.
think he'll
And he
put
wins
up
the
this
popular-
fight everybody's talking about.
I think he will.
Well, I think he'll obviously fight the
I think he will.
results
Yeah.
endlessly. Like I think that, but I think he'll just step down. Like if it's
I wouldn't put
clear situation, I think
I wouldn't put it
I
past
don't-
him to
if
incite
it's
his
not
followers to raise hell.
If it's not clear though, let's say he wins by like
yeah,
single-digit percentage points,
right.
which is a strong possibility that he could win by single-digit or lose by single-digit percentage points.
You know, we're in for
I
some
don't
shit.
think he's gonna walk away and just say, "Okay, Biden, here's the keys to the office."
You know what the worst thing about all this is so let's say Biden wins. Like the policies of the previous president and the environment they were in, typically the economy kind of trails.
Yeah,
So we've had COVID hit, we've put trillions of stimulus in, we've got a global recession. And if Biden becomes president, we're probably 1 or 2 years away before, whether it's Biden or Trump, that catches up to us.
Oh, yeah.
And people really start hurting. So Biden's the next president, whoever it is going to get blamed for a shit economy that essentially they're inheriting from the previous.
well, maybe it would be a good thing if Trump won. That would be an eye-opener to Trump's followers that Trump sucks.
It could be, or maybe a stimulus can keep it all afloat. Maybe we can just keep pumping trillions of dollars into the thing, and nobody will notice.
Speaking to the term limits, I do have like some exercise thoughts on how you would reshape the federal system, but in keeping it what it is right now, I think that the term limits are actually too short for a president. I think 4 years is way too short to make any meaningful. I mean, I just told you that in my view, 2 years at a company
Yeah,
isn't enough to get quality experience
Agreed.
and quality relationships. You're leading a country
yeah.
for 4 years.
I would
There's not enough time to do much of anything.
I
in
would
that
be
4
open
years.
to 6 years, but I'm not open to longer than that at this time.
I feel like 6 is actually a good idea, and I think that also helps prevent the last year just being wasted on campaigning.
Huge waste. It feels
Fucking
like
Trump, he filled out the paperwork to run for office the day that he was inaugurated in 2016. That's just disgusting.
nah, man, he's just efficient with
I
his
get it.
time.
He's just showing he's in it to win it.
It's like, hey man, how about you
Yeah.
just get in the office and see if you even like the job?
But I mean, dude, props to him. I mean, we were just out by the border of Mexico, and we saw that border wall. Oh, wait, there was no border wall. People don't realize, man. There's just open
Don't give
space.
any more ammunition or fuel to the fire for the Republican that's listening to this.
Yeah. Hey, but I think being Republican's fine. I think that
Our
being
one-
Trump is just rough.
Our one listener voted for Joe Jorgensen.
Nice.
I asked him today.
Nice.
Your vote on that, I think
I got to somebody.
You did.
you got to me, man. Like
You did.
that's a legit. I saw it as a
That's
legit
why we
voice.
do this. Get people to think outside.
Yeah.
Think out of the box.
All right, guys, let's wrap this shit up.
Wrap
Let's
it
see
up.
what happens tonight, man.
Godspeed.